Hello there! And welcome back to another video! So, 3 months ago, I posted a video where I was trying out the Arches Watercolour or Coldpress 300 GSM watercolour paper for the first time, and I expressed some dissatisfaction with having a piece of paper that costs minimum $60 a pad, where I was still experiencing a lot of trouble with warping and I was just unhappy. Everything else about the paper I was 10 out of 10 happy with. Great paper, no complaints. It's just I expected the creme de la creme, super famous, everybody swears by this paper to have less warping, and it did have less warping, but it wasn't no warping. So Candy was not very happy basically. In that video, after expressing my complaints, this lovely viewer by the name of Lexor-chan, they recommended I try out stretching the watercolor paper using gummy tape. Now, as someone who's been drawing for give or take 15 years and somebody who's been trying to do watercolor stuff properly for around 8 years, I have tried stretching paper before, but it's never quite worked out, and I believe that's because I haven't had the right tools. So I haven't had one of them like wooden stretcher things that have the bars and the this and the that, and I haven't had the right tapes, I haven't had the right like absorbent board things or whatever it is. But Lexor-chan recommended that I try this thing called gummy tape, and then after some googling and some stalking of my art store and talking to a billion different people, I found one that I thought looked like it was. I saw some like quote-unquote gummy tape on Amazon that was like for $35 and it looked off. I found some on Wish and it looked off, and then I went to my local Michael's and I didn't find anything, but then I went to my local Desserts, which is a French-Canadian brand that's here where I live, and then I asked one of the staff and we had a big old conversation about it. She didn't specialize in watercolor stuff, but she did take a fine arts class, and she said that this was the stuff that her professor used for her. So I bought it $13 for a big old roll. Not the most affordable, but not like crazy expensive, I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't recommend anyone buy it if you're just trying to like dabble and you haven't really done too much in watercolor. I might think that this is something like if you've got some money to spare, or you're really into watercolor, this might be something that's your cup of tea. But as some long-term viewers of the channel might know, that I've been at war with buckling watercolor paper for years and years now. Like, I'm tempted to call this like a series, a saga, because I distinctly remember in 2018 or something like that, I did a watercolor painting of Spider-Man, and there I was just kind of like giving all of my complaints with watercolor between the buckling and bleeding and this and that. And then again earlier this year with this Arches watercolor paper, same thing. And then I'm fairly sure every single time I've done watercolor on this channel I've complained about the buckling. So I bought this gummy tape last weekend and I tried it out today. I watched like 3 or 4 different tutorials. It said, and please Lexor-chan, if you're watching, correct me if I'm wrong, but it said to like soak the paper thoroughly first. I used the little spray bottle that I have for my plants, and then dry out the excess, and I used a microfiber cloth for that, and dry out my little surface. So I use this bathroom tile, so it's a tile that I got from Home Depot that's typically used to tile bathrooms, but I use it as a paint palette because it's all smooth and stuff, it's easy to clean, and it's flat. Like typically plates aren't flat, so I like using this tile as my paint palette for like acrylics, but then I also like using it as my surface to tape stuff on when I do watercolor, because it's water resistant, easy to clean, easy to maneuver. So I taped that. I was slightly scared that the gummy tape would not stick to the tile because it's a tile, but it stuck. Good news. But yeah, so I soaked the watercolor paper, and then I took off the excess, and then I put it on, and then I cut out my tape things to size, and so I put them on, and then I soaked them with a little sponge, and you can see all my fingerprints all over it, and then I waited for it to completely dry before I started actually putting the paint on. And if we go back early in the video, I sketched this on my iPad, I printed it, I traced it, I transferred it, and then I started painting. And yeah, all the videos that I watched had the paper clean before they soaked it, but I do not trust myself with that, so I decided to transfer my sketch before soaking it, and that could have been a mistake. Again, if you're an expert in this, or you're Lexor-chan, which is my savior, please let me know about that. It didn't seem to go too badly. The pencil sketch was quite light, so it didn't smudge, but I didn't try to erase it. Like I was just hoping to cover it with the painting, which I did. But yeah, let me know if that's like a faux pas or something like that, because I want to learn. But all right, we are 5 minutes into this. Did it work? Because to my understanding, a lot of the times it's not very obvious, like the buckling I'm complaining about is not very visible over camera. But I will tell you right now that it worked! Yeah! Yeah! Clap, 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 yeah! It worked! It worked! So, is this the perfect solution? No. And I will get into that in a minute, but did it stop the paper from buckling? Yes! And was it relatively easy to use? Yes! My one complaint with it is this gummy thing is very, well, it's not difficult, but it's out of the way to find. Like, it wasn't in my regular art store, it wasn't on my regular other art store, aka Amazon. I think it would be, it's just like, I don't trust it because it's like, it really just looks like construction paper in a roll. Like, how do you, and it's actually a lot larger than you would think. Like, it's a hefty boy. So, I don't know. I don't think I would trust myself to get this from something that you're not, like, confident in. So, again, like something like that My Logo Desserts, or a website that you know trust, and you're somebody else has bought from it and it's gotten the exact product that you're looking for. Because yeah, it also wasn't really packaged, it just has like a sticker on it. It's not packaged or anything, which is good for the environment, but it's not the best for, you know, identifying what brand and what thing and what thing and what other, like making sure you have the right tape. But yes, it stopped it from buckling. I will say that the paper that I'm doing this test on, which in hindsight might have not been my smartest idea, but this is another section of that Arches watercolor paper. So that's the 300 Coldpress GSM, 300 GSM Coldpress watercolor paper by Arches. So this is, again, the most expensive paper I own out of all the papers. I think the only paper I own that's more expensive than this is my diploma from college. But that thing's like in his like manila plastic foldery thing, so I don't think I will accidentally paint on my diploma, though I might if times get desperate, I don't know. But yes, it's the most expensive paper I own besides my diploma, and maybe it's biasing me towards this like soaking and stretching method. I do want to next time try out my Gansai XL or my Strathmore watercolor papers, something that's a little bit more easily accessible, easily replaceable, because yeah, I do think that this is the solution to all of my problems. So I hinted that it's not an ideal world, we're not happily married, live forever after. There are a couple little caveats that I think I should cover if anyone is in the same boat as me, where you hate watercolor paper buckling and you think that this is going to change your life forever. It is going to change your life forever, I think. But one important consideration, which is again maybe where I should have not used my most expensive paper on this, is that it leaves a residue. First of all, it's really annoying to get off. You know those like satisfying clips that I usually include when I do watercolor, where I'm like peeling the tape off, you can get the reveal and it's like super like visual ASMR-y. Yes, that's not happening here. I even like sped up that bit where I'm taking off the tape a bit extra because it's painful. It was painstaking. I was suffering. It was breaking my heart to have it be so painful to remove. And in a tutorial watching, typically what they say, and then also the girl at the art store said this as well, where they just like use an X-Acto knife and they trim off the bit that the tape is touching. And you know, is fine if you're using a pad that's like 10 cents a sheet or something like that. But when we're looking at the Arches watercolor paper, I would rather not have to trim off any excess paper if I don't have to, because it's like, it feels slightly wasteful to trim off the edges when it's already like, I mean, taping off the edges is already something, but then trimming them off as well, I don't know, I would rather not do that if I don't have to. So yeah, that again, when I try out with the Gansai, I'll be a bit more liberal with, you know, anticipating that I'll just trim the bits where the tape is currently covering. And I did some brainstorming with Mom, and she was suggesting where I could maybe like dampen the adhesive, or maybe put some like paper towel in between or something like that. But I'm like, it kind of defeats the purpose, because like the point of the whole stretching situation is, you know, if we get into the science of it, like you soak the paper because then the paper expands as it absorbs moisture, and then you tape it down with this gummy tape, and the tape does need to have a lot of strength to it, because if not, the paper is going to shrink again. And that's kind of what leads to buckling, where you have bits of the paper that are expanded because they're wet, and there's bits of the paper that aren't expanded, that they're contracted because they're dry. So if you soak all of it, then you stretch all of it, but then if you don't tape it down solidly and hold it down like very firmly, then again you're going to just return to that problem where, you know, bits are going to be contracted and bits are going to be stretched, and then you're going to have again the buckling, which is where it warps, like wiggles, and you have like peaks and valleys in it, which is my enemy number one. when it comes to watercolor paper. So yeah, the tape does need to be as sticky as it is and as firm as it is, which again leads to the side effect where it's hard to get off. So what I did do to get it off is I re-soaked it, and then I kind of like used my nails, and maybe you can see it, I have particularly long nails right now, so that was helpful. So yeah, I used my nails to kind of scrape it off, and I got it wet, and it helped, but there was a little bit of the adhesive residue there, which tinted the edges slightly yellow. I don't know if that will show up in camera, but in person I could definitely see it, and it was something that, you know, might not look the most polished in a finished piece of artwork. And also another thing that I kind of noticed was, so typically when I use just masking tape to tape my edges, when I peeled off the masking tape, I got a pretty clean line from where my paint would like overlap with the edges of the tape. That wasn't the case here. So for most of the piece, I don't have paint overlapping with the edges of the tape, but for the areas in which I do, and you'll see a little bit from now when I start removing the tape, it was like the paint kind of seeped under the tape, or sort of seeped through the tape, or I don't know. So it also left, it did not leave a very satisfying clean line from where the tape was, which again does not look the most polished in my opinion for a final piece of work. Here begins the torture, and again I sped this up extra compared to the rest of the clips. So yeah, solutions for that, I'd welcome suggestions in the comments. Again, for this piece, I just kind of paint it over the edge, and then another solution that I've seen about, was told about, was to just, you know, commit to trimming it, but I'd welcome any and other solutions you might have to either not have this issue, to remove the tape better. And see, even now when the tape's coming off, you can sort of start to see around the edges that it's a little bit warped, but that wasn't the case while I was painting. Like, while I was painting it, it stayed completely flat, and that was just so satisfying. It felt so smooth, and I was not feeling like I was fighting the paper. I mean, I was fighting the paint a little bit, because the other arch enemy of mine with watercolor is waiting for the layers to dry before you add a new layer, which again I don't think that I've been working on this all day basically, because I kept having to just like, okay, I'll go read something as this layer dries, or I'll go watch a YouTube video as this layer dries. Typically when I do a watercolor, I try to do like a digital painting on my iPad as I'm doing, so I'll like flip between the two. So when the watercolor is drying, I'll work a little bit on the digital one, and then I'll come back to watercolor, and then I'll go back to the digital. But I just didn't feel like doing that today, so it was just a waiting game all over. But yeah, because of the residue, and you can see there how it just is not a clean line under where I had his collarbones, so that's why I just used India ink to cover up that border. And yeah, anyway, so gummy tape, yes, no more buckling, stretching. Thank you so much, Lexo-chan. I really appreciate the suggestion, and yeah, let me know any tips, recommendation, thoughts down in the comments, and I'll see you all sometime.